Toutatis is the brand new multi-launch roller coaster at Parc Asterix and broke records as the tallest and fastest roller coaster in France. With a budget of €28 million, this ride is a huge investment for the park. So is this roller coaster any good? How does it ride and how does it compare to similar coasters, particularly its most obvious rival, Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg? All that and more coming right up. I'm Rollercoaster David and this is my review of Toutatis at Parc Asterix. Toutatis starts with a short drop out of the station, which sends you into the first rolling launch section, rapidly boosting your speed. This catapults you into a step up, twisting to the left and into the first inversion, which I've seen described as a cutback, but it's more like an extreme overbank. Turning to the right, you then hit two off-axis airtime hills before going over the switch track and into the second launch. Dipping down, you catch the next launch and are fired over an airtime hill and most of the way up the top hat, before falling backwards and into the third backwards launch, again over a small airtime hill and jump. You sail backwards up the reverse spike before free falling into the final launch. This time you're accelerated to the ride's top speed of 68 miles per hour or 110 kilometers per hour and sent straight over the top of the 167 foot tall top hat. You then drop down a 101 degree beyond vertical drop and pull out, jinking to the left and up to the right into a long 0G stall. You then twist back to the right and into an inward wave turn to the left, before pulling up into a large ejector airtime hill. A quick chicane then sends you into a right side stall, providing several seconds of weightlessness, before you turn to the left and flip underneath the track in a heartline roll. You then turn to the right and the ride ends with a powerful double up, before you're slowed down by the final brake run. As you can see, there's a lot going on in this ride, and I'll go into some of these elements in more detail in due course, but one thing I want to cover early is the ride's theming, which is quite spectacular. The whole area the ride is set in is a new section of the park, celebrating the festival of Toutatis, and if you're wondering where the name Toutatis comes from, it's from a Celtic god often mentioned in some of the Asterix books, rather than it being a specific character. It's represented with a suitable statue, and the whole area around the ride has festival decorations with lots of small details. It looks fantastic, and the slightly cartoonish nature of the theming really grounds it to fit in with the Asterix characters and comics. It's hard to imagine that before this ride was built, the area was just trees that the bobsled coaster went past. The transformation is really quite incredible. The theming extends itself to the wonderfully detailed station. There are hidden lights throughout it that sync up with the ride's departure, and there are also hidden lights on parts of the ride's launch, although during the daytime these aren't all that visible, and sadly I wasn't able to experience the coaster in the dark. I imagine it'll look amazing at night with this lighting package though, and I'm tempted to return to the park later in the year for some Halloween night rides. Back to the actual coaster though, as I have a lot to say about it. I really enjoyed the start of Toutatis. The first launch isn't mega powerful, but it's got a good kick, and the upwards twist into the extreme overbank is a cool sensation. There's loads of drawn out hang time here, before the ride twists back around, and it's an element I think is pretty much unique to this ride. The off-axis airtime hills that follow were also a pleasant surprise, as they actually do give some airtime, unlike their counterparts on Pantheon, which are taken just a bit too slowly to provide any meaningful forces. The launch sequence is another highlight, and I really like the way it builds up. The first time you go over the small hill you get some floater air, but every subsequent boost gives you stronger and stronger ejector air. The launches feel powerful, and are even better towards the back of the train. The reverse spike feels amazing in the back too, as you get some wonderful floatiness all the way up and down the spike, accompanied by a stunning view of the rest of the ride area. I'd hoped that the head choppers crossing the launch section would be a thrilling feature, and they look pretty scary off-ride, but on the ride they aren't actually that noticeable, as you don't seem to come that close to them, as they're mostly built over the dips with the G-forces pushing you down in your seat, rather than over the airtime sections where it could have felt like you were being thrown up into them. The final launch feels great, and everything up to that point of the ride is fantastic. Unfortunately, there's one bit of the ride that follows that's just a bit disappointing. On the far side of the top hat, there's a very strong and distracting trim. Whilst it's less noticeable towards the back of the train, in the front it really feels kind of awkward as you lean forward against it. In initial concept renders of the ride, this was marked as an anticipation stall, and intended to give a cliff-hanging experience, and even was supposed to be a highlight of the ride. I suspect they were aiming for something like the hold brakes on dive coasters, but it just doesn't feel like that, and instead just feels like the train is running through treacle that's preventing it from dropping. My first ride on Tutatis was in the front of one of the trains, and this trim was very noticeable and really detracted from the ride. Fortunately, it is a lot less noticeable towards the back of the train, and once you pass it, you do get some strong ejector air in the back rows. I do wonder if the trim may be a necessary evil, as taking a 101 degree beyond vertical drop in a train this long might produce excessive forces in the back rows that may be beyond what engineers would consider acceptable, but I also can't help but feel that this could have been designed better, maybe slowing you down before the drop rather than during it, or maybe even making the drop a less steep angle if it was going to cause problems. The idea of a hold before the drop is fine, but it just doesn't work in a train this long, where you may even be getting slowed down whilst you're still going up a high element. Fortunately, this is the only real negative part of the ride though, and the rest of Tutatis more than makes up for it. Tutatis maintains an excellent sense of speed throughout, mostly aided by the low to the ground nature of most of the track. Some of the landscaping in the back half of the ride does look a little barren at the moment, but I suspect this will look better and better as trees and bushes grow back from the excavations that were required to make the ride. The zero-G stall, or inverted airtime hill as Intamin call it, is another fun element that gives some nice weightlessness. I did notice that just like this element on Velocicoaster and Pantheon, it has a slight shake to it, like a left-right-left rattle during the inverted time. I'm not exactly sure what causes it, as the track seems perfectly smooth, but for some reason Intamin's version of this element has this unusual quirk, whereas similar elements by RMC are silky smooth throughout. It's not a major issue by any means, and the element still works and gives the upside down airtime it should. Airtime is definitely a big feature of this ride though, and Intamin actually claim a world record for the most airtimes on a steel coaster. While some of these, such as the drop out of the station, may depend on where you're sitting, it's still an impressive record, and two of the best airtime elements are the inward wave turn and the following ejector airtime hill. This area is unfortunately rather difficult to film as there aren't really any pathways that you can see it from, but the ejector hill in particular is really intense, and it actually reminds me a lot of the first hill you get in Maverick at Cedar Point. The side stall also adds a bit of variety to the airtime with some nice sustained floater air, which gives a bit of a respite from the predominantly ejector nature of the ride's airtime. The final inversion I had high hopes for, thinking it might be as good as Velocicoaster's legendary Mosasaurus roll, but it almost happens a bit too quickly for you to fully take it in, and it lacks a sense of anticipation you get as you approach the Jurassic World coaster's signature element. It's a very fast flip underneath the track, so it feels less like a 360 head over heels spiral, and more like a quick 180 flip. The finale of the ride doesn't disappoint though, and the double up right at the end always provided some strong airtime to end the ride with an emphatic point. The trains are generally comfortable and have some nicely detailed theming designs at the front. Other than that, they're pretty much the standard modern Intamin trains, so you get a good view most of the time whilst you're riding. The airtime is pretty strong in places of the ride though, so if you were to ride a lot back to back, you might get some bruises on your thighs. Tutatis can run 3 trains, although most of the time it seemed to be running 2. Operations were generally pretty good though, with rapid loading and dispatches, although this could have maybe been improved if the ride had been designed with a separate unload station. I visited the park over the course of several days, and the average wait time was usually around 20 to 40 minutes, although the posted wait time at the entrance was often wildly inaccurate. If the main queue line is full, you're probably looking at about 40 minutes if none of the extensions are in use. As part of the new Festival of Tutatis area, the park has opened a burger restaurant, but if I'm being honest, I wouldn't recommend it. While some of the Magic Potion desserts did look kind of cool if you're an Asterix fan, the burgers were overpriced and uninspiring, even when compared to what's available elsewhere in the park. Personally, I'd recommend going around the corner to the restaurant towards Osiris, where you can get a much better meal for less money. So that just about covers Tutatis and its surroundings in themselves, but where does it rank compared to similar rides? Well, I think Tutatis is certainly the best swing launch coaster in Europe, hands down. Operation Enterprise, Gold Rush and Fury just don't come anywhere near close to how impressive this coaster is. The obvious coaster to compare with Tutatis is of course Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg in America, and it's a very close call. I think these coasters are both great in their own right, and picking between them is incredibly close for me. There's aspects I prefer of each ride and aspects that are equally good. Toutatis obviously is far better theming, but I prefer the first inversion on Pantheon. The off-axis airtime hills are better on Toutatis, but the top part is much better on Pantheon. The launches are equally good on both coasters, and the unique elements each coaster have are great. The sideways hill on Pantheon and the ejector hill on Toutatis, both elements are just good in their own right. They each add to the ride in their own unique way. If I had to give one ride an overall edge though, it would probably be Toutatis, as I feel there's just a little bit more to the ride, it's slightly longer, and the ending is definitely better. It's really close though, but I'm yet to have a night ride on Toutatis, and there's a decent chance that that might further seal the decision for me. Toutatis does of course have another upcoming challenger from Park Warner Madrid's new coaster, Batman Gotham City Escape, which should be opening in the very near future, and I look forward to seeing how it compares later this year. As it stands though, I think Toutatis is a fantastic coaster that's a great addition to Park Asterix and really complements their existing lineup of coasters with something that truly stands out. If you get the chance, be sure to visit this park, as apart from that slightly annoying top hat trim, you're going to have an amazing ride that you'll want to experience again and again. I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.